And I will say, I have learned more in the last 5 years in the home birth setting about birth than I had learned in all my doctorate training to become a midwife.
Huh. Crazy how that works.
Yeah. Well, it's fun when you just see birth unfold in its natural state.
Hi, I'm Rachel, owner of the NaturalBirth site, certified birth doula, childbirth educator, and midwife's assistant.
And I'm Tiffany Muniz, certified birth doula, lactation counselor, and midwife assistant.
Here, you'll learn all about different aspects of pregnancy, birth, and postpartum.
Remember, none of this information should take the place of your care provider and is not medical advice.
Birth is not a medical emergency.
Thanks for listening.
Hey, listeners, welcome to the Natural Birth Talk. I'm your host, Rachel.
And I'm Tiffany.
And we are here with a home birth midwife, Deb Lowrence. She's in Southern Illinois. And today we are going to talk about vaginal breech birth, specifically in the home setting. But before we get started, we want to let Deb introduce herself.
Sure. Well, first of all, what an honor to be asked to be on this podcast with you guys. I've met you both at different times in my life, and I have been very impressed with the work that you're doing. So I'm honored and feel privileged to be invited. So, well, a little bit about myself. I am a certified nurse midwife. So I started out as a nurse first and then did a lot of things within nursing, but my passion has always been labor and delivery. That's where I worked the majority of my lifetime. And matter of fact, I was in a job where I was the manager of a unit inside a hospital, loved it. I had so much autonomy. It was just the best. And we were doing such great work. But as things happen in hospitals, when new people come in, new ideas, new CEOs with ways to look at conserving money, eventually what happened was the managers in our hospital lost their positions. And I was actually then allowed to stay in labor and delivery, but was delegated to nights, 3 12-hour shifts. And I was bored to tears. After having worked a lot of hours in my lifetime, I just found that I wasn't satisfied. So at that point in my life, which is rather late in life, when some of my friends are thinking about retirement, I get this wild hair idea that I'm just going to go back to school. I had always admired all those women when I went to these big conferences that had all those credentials behind their name. And so I thought, maybe I just need to go back to school. So at that time, I had my associate's degree. So I went back to get my bachelor's. While I was there, I had a great mentor who said, you really should become a nurse practitioner. And I thought about it for a while and I was like, okay, I'll do this. And she said, well, now you have to decide your specialty, whether you want to generalize or specialize, whether you want to be family nurse or something else. And I said, well, I've got to do OB because that's my love. That's my passion. I love women and babies. So went back to school to get my master's, graduated and started as a certified nurse midwife, got asked to teach undergrad nursing at University of Illinois.
Wow.
And for about 7 years, I worked full-time as a certified nurse midwife in a very busy physician hospital-based practice. And I taught pretty much, well, it was part-time, but it seemed more full-time at University of Illinois.
I love your tenacity. Like, you're just like, I'm going to go get it and I'm going to do it. And I think that is awesome.
Well, you must be tired.
There was this other little caveat too, because while I was there, I thought, you know what? I probably shouldn't stop at my master's. Let's just go ahead and get my doctorate.
You're like super tenacious. I love it. Like, you're just working. And you know what? This is just a funny little connection. My bachelor's degree is from the University of Illinois.
Well, isn't that great?
I don't use it.
Many
you
people
use yours, so that's good. But
most of us don't use what we went to college for.
No,
that's right. That's right.
Anyway,
what
keep
was
going.
really kind of funny in my life story is I was attending college at the same time my daughters were. And so
You're just like, I'm going to take all these social norms and I'm going to flip them on their head.
Right?
Yeah. So I loved the practice that I worked in. It was a very busy physician hospital-based practice. We delivered at 2 hospitals that were located in Decatur, Illinois.
Okay.
And I was honestly the first midwife that came to that practice and kind of settled back into the area. They had a midwife years ago, but it was really funny because the 2 hospitals were just so different. One was very midwifery friendly and the other one was not so midwife friendly.
Yeah.
And so I had a lot of blazing to do of new trails, setting up the midwifery program. I talked to my physician as time went on and said, hey, we've got to build this program. So over the years, he gave me the privilege of hiring more midwives to join our practice. And we grew this wonderful practice and even started a laborist hospitalist program at one of the hospitals using midwives to staff it. Wow. So that was about a 7-year process.
Oh, holy cow.
Wow.
In that process, I started kind of seeing some things that were not sitting right with me. I think one of the stories I always like to share is one of the doctors one day looked at me, and I don't think he meant it as a compliment, but he said, you know, Deb, you are one of the most midwifey midwives I've ever met.
What?
So in your mind, you're like, I'm going to take that as a compliment, even though I don't think he meant it that way.
So, you know, I think I had a very midwife heart. And I always tell people, unfortunately, when you're trained as a certified nurse midwife, you are trained in the medical model. You are trained in that model. And the same thing that we do with everybody else in that model, we breed fear into everybody. Yep. We breed fear into the nurses, the patients, the physicians, the midwives. Yeah. And I think also we create this environment that really is not conducive for good health inside those settings. And I started to see a lot more like bullying, coercion, manipulation of patients by the physicians, of nurses by the physicians, of midwives by the physicians. And it just became a hostile environment for my heart. Yeah. And so I was looking to see what else could I do? What else was out there? I happened upon a podcast one night. I think I was working nights at the hospital, one of my call shifts, and I happened on a podcast where they were interviewing a doctor called Dr. Stuart Fishbein.
Oh, we just talked about him in our last recording.
I'm such a fangirl of his.
Oh, me too, girl. So, you know, his story was so unbelievable, where he had been a practicing physician doing breech births for years and years at a hospital. And then one day they came to him and said they wanted him to stop. And he said, well, you know, I've just been credentialed for 3 more years. We'll talk at the end of 3 years. And they said, no, we want you to stop, and we want you to stop today. Yeah, and he said, well, what about all my clients? And they said, we don't care. And so he said he quit. And then he had this aha moment like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? He got invited to go to home births with a couple of midwives that he had worked with. And from his accounting, he was hooked. He loved it. He absolutely had a breakthrough moment. And he'll talk on many of his podcasts about how his mind changed from that traditional OBGYN thinking to this more encompassing the midwifery model of care.
I think that's common. I think as soon as so many care providers, at least the ones that are willing to actually continue learning and not just stay with what they've already learned, the ones that are willing to continue learning, they get like that little taste of home birth. Whether you're a doctor or a midwife or a doula or even just a parent, you get that little taste of home birth and it goes well, and you see how well and how amazing and how just like, it is. And then you're just hooked. You're just hooked.
Yeah.
Yes,
True.
I agree.
Yep.
I agree. So after listening to that podcast, that piqued my interest. I became a diehard fan listening to every podcast. By Dr. Steve. I also reached out to some home birth midwives in Illinois that lived in northern Illinois that were doing home births and started learning more about home birth. Laws were changing in Illinois at the time where it was going to allow nurse practitioners who had practiced for a certain amount of time, done so much continuing education, that we could apply for something called full practice authority, which is a big deal, which meant I didn't have to have a collaborative doctor to start a practice.
And it opened up so many more options for moms in Illinois, because where Tiffany and I are and where you are now, there weren't any home birth midwives that could legally practice until that law changed. And when that law changed, now there's several of them in this area, and it's amazing.
So I took a leap of faith. I opened my own business about 5 years ago in an area where people do not even understand what midwives are or are about. Did not know if it would be successful or not, but took a leap of faith. And honestly, I do have a strong faith background, and I knew this was God-driven. And everywhere
Me too.
It was. Oh my gosh. I could tell you so many stories of how things lined up. So when I started looking at the home birth practice, of course, I'm looking for people that can help me. And my niece had came across a midwife who was a certified professional midwife. And she said, Deb, you should meet this lady. I think you guys would be great together.
That's awesome.
So I called Dessa Cooper and asked to meet with her. And we started this conversation. And she had been a certified professional midwife. And in Illinois, until recently, those midwives were not allowed to be licensed in the state. So in reality, they took chances if they practiced. So she chose not to practice as a CPM, but was very willing to come in and help be a birth assistant to me. But one of her very first questions to me in that interview was, are you going to do breech?
Oh, yeah, which is the whole point of this podcast. I got so sucked into your story. I forgot what we were even talking about.
I was like, I don't know, Dessa, because I never really thought about it. You know, in the hospital setting, no, we didn't do breech.
Right. Yeah.
And so, you know, I started thinking back on my lifetime, and I was like, well, wait a moment. Years and years ago, I did work with some doctors that did breech. So that stuff was kind of tucked in the back of my mind. And I told her, I said, well, you know, Dessa, I would consider it, but I definitely would need some more training. And so immediately I looked for training, and guess who I trained with? Dr. Stu.
Dr. Stu.
I went out to Salt Lake City with a group of midwives and did some in-depth training with him. And I think at the end of the training day, I think I looked around the room, and all of the midwives that were there for the training, we all just were sitting there with this look on our face, like, what is going on here? We heard about all the studies that show that breech is very normal and very good for women.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's 40 studies that show this. And here we were taught, you know, oh, guys, breech, you can't go there. Too dangerous. Yeah. So we, at the end of the day, we just were all sitting there going, this is like too simple. Like, he made it so simple. Yeah. And I said, this is way more simple than a shoulder dystocia. And we're trained for shoulder dystocias. Right. And he agreed. He said, yes, this is way more simple. So I went away from that training thinking, I can do this. I can do this. And it wasn't even very long. I got my first surprise breech.
Yeah. A surprise breech?
Surprise breech. Yes.
Yeah.
So the story on this young lady, which is an amazing story itself. She was paralyzed from the waist down from a car accident.
Okay.
Had gotten pregnant right after the car accident, was treated as very high risk in a tertiary setting, was sent to MFM and all these specialists, and felt like the whole time she was birthing that she was kind of like a lab rat. being watched by all these residents and things. And so she came away from that experience, a very natural birth experience, by the way, in a hospital setting, but just came away with not wanting that same experience again. And so she chose to come the home birth route. And so I think it was wonderful for her. She got to be in her home for her visits where she was comfortable with her equipment, her wheelchair, her lifts, things like that. And so, you know, when it was time for her birth, she went overdue and got a little anxious about that and decided to try some other things to bring on labor. So I had checked her earlier that morning and head down, everything was good. We did a membrane sweep with her permission. She chose to do some homeopathy, some herbals to try to get labor going throughout the day. I got called back out that night to her house and hadn't been there like very long at all when her water broke and she started pushing. And so she's pushing and head's starting to crown up and Dad is looking real funny at the bottom. I'm looking real funny at the bottom. And he goes,
you're like, that's not a head.
He goes, what's wrong with that baby's head? And I went, that's not a head.
Oh my gosh.
So here we were with a surprise breech. She obviously was going fast. It was her third baby. So I just looked at her. I said, you know, we can transfer to a hospital if you choose. I feel fairly comfortable right here, right now with doing this here. And she chose to stay. It was a little harder for me because I couldn't even get her in the ideal position that I love breech births to deliver, which is all fours. I could not get her in that position. So we just had to go with it. And it was the most picture perfect breech birth I've ever seen in my life.
And trusting her instincts. You know, like we know from our training to get them in hands and knees, all fours, but we also know that sometimes mom's body tells her what to do, exactly what she needs. And you were just like, can't do it. Obviously, like it just worked.
Yeah, it was just magical, just magical. Since that time, I have had, I think, 4 or 5 more surprise breech, and everyone goes, surprise, what do you mean? Well, you got to remember in the home birth world, we don't do a lot of vaginal exams, you know, and honestly, most of the babies were head down at my last check with, you know, feeling and palpating the Leopolds. But in labor, somehow they flip. So we've had some very surprise breech, did very well. The moms it's just magical. And so one of the things that I've learned from my trainings that I like is and people look at me weird, but I almost prefer breech. I can tell how a breech baby is doing.
Because the cord's right there.
The cord's there, they're moving, their legs, they're grooving. You know, when a baby's head down, I don't have a clue how that baby's doing. Other than listening to the fetal heart tones, I really don't have a clue how that baby is doing. But with a breech birth, you can just watch it unfold. You know, because of the trainings I've done, you know what to watch for that's normal and you know abnormal. When you see abnormal, you need to intervene. And so it's just been wonderful. And then, Rachel, I think I met you at the Breech Without Borders training last year. So that's been my deal, is that every couple of years I will attend a training so that I can keep my skills up.
Yeah, that's vital. Well, and that's the thing, you know, the number one way to make vaginal breech birth safe is to do it with a skilled provider.
Yes.
Like that's the
now,
key.
I don't know how many births make you a skilled provider.
True. That's vague.
Yeah, it's vague. But I really have enjoyed doing those births when they happen. And, you know, sometimes breech births in the home setting, at any setting, do require a little bit more help in the beginning with their breasts. So we will do those inhalation breaths just to kind of get them going. But most of them do extremely well. And so I've really enjoyed doing this aspect of birth that most people, you know, especially in hospitals, I mean, they are going to whisk them away for a C-section. I'd also loved Dr. David Hayes when he did his training, because there's lots of maneuvers that you can be taught. And he just narrowed it down. He said, these are the most 5 important things you need to know, and it'll work for every delivery. So I was very pleased that he kind of took all the information and drilled it down to usable bites.
Yes. And he's coming back. So just like in a week from this recording, he's coming back to our area.
I know.
And
I wish I could sneak over.
24 people signed up.
Great.
So excited. So excited for that. I mean, I'm just so glad that our area has so many people who are willing to learn these vital skills, because that's the thing. You said multiple of your vaginal breech births have been a surprise.
Yep.
These skills are vital. And then if it can save a mom from a C-section, especially when intuitively mom knows she doesn't need it, I mean, that's major abdominal surgery.
Yes, I agree. And we know that, unfortunately, those C-sections are contributing to the maternal morbidity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then even sometimes, even in the hospital, moms present with baby rumping. That's what they call it when baby's coming out breech versus crowning. Moms present rumping. Sometimes you don't have time to get them to a C-section, but if these providers who may not normally offer vaginal breech birth, if they don't have the skills, then that's going to be a problem, or it could be a problem. So even for people who don't regularly offer it, they should still have the training.
Oh, you should have the training and have it in your back pocket to use anytime. So yeah, I have become a big advocate of breech birth. I'm also a big advocate for vaginal birth after section. Those are those are just become 2 of my passions, along with my other passion, which is spreading midwifery all across Southern Illinois and Indiana. So I have been trying to help midwives start their own businesses to provide more home birth. I will be expanding my business. I have 2 midwifery students that are going to be graduating soon that will be joining my business spreading labor of love in a bigger kind of area. So, and hopefully make it so I don't have to work so hard.
Right.
And then I'm trying to recruit midwives. I would love to have a midwife for Arthur Arcola area in Central Illinois, which is dominant with Amish. Okay. And then I would like to develop some midwifery in Southern Indiana. There's a real need down in that area as well.
Well, hey, if any of you listening are in those areas, we can put you in contact with Deb.
Yeah, reach out to me. I'm always looking for midwifery students, midwifery, people that are already midwives, doulas, anybody that wants to kind of help. I just recently brought on 2 young girls who have an interest in midwifery, but just beginning students. And they're going to become birth assistants for me and help us with deliveries. So
I love that you're going to kind of be their precept, because now they're going to get to see all of what can truly happen in midwifery care, which does include surprise breech babies.
Yes, it does. You never know what you're going to get.
So what is maybe your most memorable, good or bad, but most memorable vaginal breech birth? Hey listener, do you want a comprehensive yet concise and inexpensive online at your own pace natural birth education course to help you prepare for natural birth, pregnancy, and postpartum? Then check out the description below for that and our helpful products guide. Now back to the show.
Ooh, I think there's been several for different reasons, but there was a mom who lost a baby the year prior. The baby was born with anencephaly. We knew that early on. We knew that the baby probably would not survive. She had originally planned a home birth, but because of some complications that were happening at the end of the pregnancy, they did decide to deliver in a hospital. Okay. So this was her next birth, her home birth. And again, we got presented with the information at the last minute that, oh my gosh, we've got a breech. And we offered the hospital transfer, but that mom was just using her good intuition And so she just did a beautiful job at pushing out this, breech baby that did wonderfully. It was just a magnificent thing. And I think those redemptive births, those were what I call them, where maybe you had an outcome or maybe an experience that wasn't quite what you wanted, and then you have this wonderful experience in a different setting. I think those are fun for me.
That's awesome. Well, and for her, being in the hospital again may have been very traumatic, just simply being in the hospital.
Yes.
Because of how things went last time. And to add to that, being in the hospital and having a breech baby, her vaginal breech birth may have gone very differently if she was in that stressful hospital situation where she already had trauma versus being at home where she was comfortable and just calmer.
Yes,
that helps.
correct.
That helps any birth, vaginal breech birth included, to go a lot better.
Yes. And I will say, I have learned more in the last 5 years in the home birth setting about birth than I had learned in all my doctorate training to become a midwife.
Huh. Crazy how that works.
Yeah. Well, it's fun when you just see birth unfold in its natural state.
Yeah. Wow. Tiffany, do you have any thoughts or questions?
I am really excited because I'm hoping that my clients will cooperate, but I'm planning to attend a conference in August. Dr. Nathan Riley from Holistic OBGYN is hosting a conference for breech and twins. And so Dr. David Hayes, Dr. Rixa Fries, Dr. Stuart Fishbein, Bliss Young, all these names that I follow and listen to are going to be there. And I'm looking forward to participating in that if I get the opportunity.
You're going to be fangirling.
Oh, I am anyway. I've been a Dr. Stu fan for so long. It's unbelievable.
That's awesome. Oh, now talk.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
We can.
I don't know what happened. I don't know if my earbuds died. Sorry, can I go back and ask my question? I had a question.
Of course you can. Of course you can.
Okay, so Deb, what do you think about breech and water birth?
Ooh, that is a good question.
That is a good question because honestly, none of my breeches have been in the water so far. Even though maybe mom had anticipated using water, whatever reason they ended up on land, as we call it, the land birth. So I don't know. I'm fine with water birth. I think that it's fine. The biggest thing is you just got to keep that bottom down under the water until baby's born, and then
that's the same
any birth
with the regular,
so it's the same thing. And most of my moms in water are going to naturally get in that hands and knees position anyway. So that is, the position that you want moms in for that breech birth, if you can get them in that.
Yeah.
So,
I know Dr. Hayes is a big fan of breech birth and water. He talks about that. Maybe it was one of the little monthly video things. I can't remember, but he talks about how he loves water for breech birth. I do have to wonder though if he just loves water in general because hospitals don't like water, so he's just like, I'm gonna like water.
Yeah.
But I mean, I like water, so
yeah. I'm looking forward to the next breech birth I have, and hopefully maybe it might be in water. So that'll be fun.
I had just heard a podcast where the provider said that they were cool with vaginal breech birth, but they just didn't want it to be in water. So I just didn't know what the norm is.
I do think, in their defense, it is harder to do maneuvers when mom's in the water because of reaching around the tub and stuff. But
that
I don't know, probably
true,
that buoyancy helps baby though, as baby's body's out, it kind of, I don't know. I'm just spitballing.
I think Dr. Stu has spoke about this on his podcast, and he's not a fan of the water because of the buoyancy. He thinks that it's the gravity that actually helps with the delivery of the baby. So in water, you don't get necessarily
you don't have that
gravity.
Yep.
So, and then as far as maneuvers, I know thinking about that because I use a large pool for most of my births. And yes, that would be very difficult, I think, to be able to do the maneuvers. But I think of it kind of like my shoulder dystocias. Most of the time, we're going to have to exit the tub anyway for some of those maneuvers. So I think that that's doable.
Yeah.
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 Well, and like you said, most of your moms have just gotten out of the tub. So, that just goes back again to mom being really instinctual, to being able to feel what's going on in her body and listen to her body. And maybe just instinctually, they're like, I'm done in the tub.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I just love listening to moms, and it's so fun. I am very much a hands-off type of midwife. So I am that midwifey midwife.
I love that.
That's what I love about you.
It's just so fun to watch moms. And like I said, I've learned more about birth and watching cues and how I never have to do a vag exam to kind of know where mom's at and what's going on. And it's just fun. It's just fun to watch this thing that happens.
That's what I was going to say. It's so awesome because I have worked with you at births before, and it's just so awesome to see a provider who truly trusts a woman's body. Because, I have been to home births where it's a home birth, but you can still tell that there is some distrust and some fear there, from the provider. So I just think it's really beautiful that, your clients get to see that true midwifery hands-off care.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I know sometimes I feel that I still intervene, sometimes too much. I have to always take a back step a little bit. As a matter of fact, when I decided to make the leap to home birth, most people don't know this, but I got a tattoo. It is a dragonfly, and it's on my wrist.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see that, but it's on my wrist, and it has the word believe underneath it. And I got it there to remind me that if I try to intervene too much with my hands, that it's there to believe in life and believe and trust in the process.
I love that. I have the chills.
That's
so awesome.
Love that. I love your awareness too of you're like, I think I still intervene too much sometimes. I think sometimes it's that just awareness, that awareness is huge. And, you guys, I'm sure you all have heard it, but for the listeners, one of the things that's said about midwives a lot is that midwives have skilled hands and know how to sit on them.
Yeah.
Yes. I tell people all the time, the midwifery, like Dr. Stu says, is the art of doing nothing.
Yeah.
And I love it. It's so much fun.
Awesome. Yep. Anything else to add before we finish up?
Just I want to keep reaching out. And if you guys, hear of any midwives looking for jobs or anything, just send them my way. Students, send them my way. I welcome because I really want to spread midwifery. That's we need to do this for all women.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yep.
It was such a joy to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Invite me back sometime. I've got
we will.
Stories.
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, listeners, thank you so much for listening today. This is beginning our vaginal breech birth series. So the next several episodes, we have this one about vaginal breech birth, and then we're going to have 2 vaginal breech birth stories, and we might throw a third one in there. We're not sure yet, but yeah. So make sure you're listening for the next few weeks. And I just want to end in saying this, that studies have shown that vaginal breech birth in the hands of a skilled provider is very safe. And you really got to be intuitive and listen to your body and listen to your baby and decide what's going to be best for you. But if you want to learn more about vaginal breech birth, just keep tuning in because we're going to share a lot of fun stories.
And if you find yourself in a pickle and you feel like you have no options, reach out to one of us, and one of us can try to help you find a provider and, give you options.
Yes, I love that. All right. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll talk to you in the next episode. Hi, Rachel Manns again. If you want to learn more, please subscribe to and rate this podcast and head over to thenaturalbirthsite.com to check out our online natural birth education course, birth story blog, YouTube channel, and more.